Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Adult Child of Dysfunction. Today, we have with us another very special guest, Dr. Tracy Hutchinson. She is an author, professor, and psychotherapist specializing in narcissistic abuse and family trauma recovery. She has served as an assistant professor at multiple universities and teaches at the graduate level at the College of William and Mary. Her expertise has been featured in Vogue, the Associated Press, and across television and radio. She is the author of Adult Children of High Conflict Parents: Find Freedom from Your Past, Heal the Pain of Toxic Relational Trauma, and Cultivate Lasting Self-Love. Wow, it's funny. Well, first of all, welcome, Dr. Hutchinson.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you are very welcome. I love that I remember when I was writing my book, had a really long title, and people said, "Well, why do you need such a long title?" And I said, "Because people need to read the title of the book and know what they're getting." And I
Yes.
and I just looked at that and I thought, take one piece out of that, and it's not the same book, right?
Right, exactly. So when you read the subtitle of it, it could get you because you're, healing relational trauma or cultivating lasting self-love and self-respect because so many adult children of dysfunctional families struggle with low self-worth, low self-esteem. I mean, it's just a measure of being in an emotionally invalidating environment. So I think it's important to do, but some people are like, that's a long title.
Yeah, no, I think I laughed because mine was like helping helping student children of alcoholic backgrounds or something, and then it was an educator's guide to identifying and empowering disconnected youth in the classroom. And I was like, take one word out of there and tell me how it means the same thing. I'm like, it doesn't, just doesn't.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
but
That's
anyway,
really important, Tammy, because, as a professor in teaching graduate students for years, and I teach the DSM-5 TR, we don't teach this in graduate curricula. These things are stumbled upon by, oh my gosh, this person has a podcast on dysfunctional families, or, decades of clinical experience where people are coming in, you start to uncover their histories, and you see that it has to do with toxic family dynamics, why they're in the situation that they're in, with whomever they attracted into their life, their partner, their children, all types of things. So it's just like, it's important. Yeah.
oh, absolutely. I'm going to jump right back though to the beginning of your book because I want you to explain to people, because I had actually never heard the term high conflict parent. I mean, I've heard
Oh,
dysfunctional family. I had just never heard it put. I mean, and that's really what it is. But
yeah.
explain in your words, in your terms, what exactly a high conflict parent
Conflict
is.
parent. So
Yeah.
a high conflict parent is can be looked at as being dysfunctional. They could be looked at as being, we use the term a lot, Lindsay Gibson's work, emotionally immature. But I like to look at there's a lot of conflict within the relationship. This could be obvious. It could be overt. Like take a person who has just a typical alcoholic parent. There might be a lot of volatility emotionally and otherwise, a lot of fights. It could be very overt, but high conflict can also be very covert. So it could be a parent or family member, in this case, a family member who has raised a child with a lot of emotional neglect. Maybe they were not a part of their life. Maybe they were in the bedroom a lot of the time during their childhood. So there's not a lot of overt conflict, but trying to emotionally attune and connect with that parent causes a lot of conflict because you're not being emotionally validated and really not parented in an emotionally validating way, if that makes sense.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I love the term. I mean, it's broad, but it's different. Now, how is that a different from like what people would just say, "Oh, I have a difficult parent," or "My mom's, just annoying," or is it bigger patterns?
Yes, it's much bigger patterns. So this is pervasive patterns that are happening chronically over time. They've happened in childhood, they continue to happen. So this isn't just a one-off. You see a lot of my clients will say, I just don't get validated with a lot of my friends and family. They say, it's your mother. My mom's annoying too.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, that's right. In relationships, they're going to rupture and they're going to repair. It's the nature of relationships, healthy ones. But the high conflict piece is there's not a lot of repair in the relationship over time. So you're feeling a lot of resentment, a lot of anger towards the person because they actually don't know how to repair, which is the interesting part. And another thing, obviously alcoholics fall under this. But a lot of times these high conflict parents, they're not drinking or using drugs.
Right.
So the children are, the adult children are saying, well, I don't really know. And then when you start to unpiece and unpack what's really going on, even though, as a therapist, that we can't diagnose people who are not in our office, but we can hear patterns of behavior and things that have happened, and we can put them into a category that helps name the problem so the client will understand. So is it narcissism? Is it sociopathy or psychopathy? I mean, that's a big pill to swallow for someone. But what I've found is that many clients find freedom in that. Once they can name the problem, they know how to deal with their parent. And they can take away that personal piece, like,
Right.
I'm not loved because my parents were never here for me, or I have low self-esteem or self-worth, or I'm just not good enough.
Right.
Yeah.
And that is, I tell everybody that is ultimately the crutch. That is the basic premise of everything that we do when we deal with childhood trauma of any kind. It's
Yes.
bring that level of awareness to, I do have this feeling of I'm just not enough. I just call it the
Yes.
not enough. It's not good enough, funny enough, smart enough, happy enough. It doesn't matter what it is. You
Yes.
and it just spirals you into this, but ultimately, and then along with that I'm not enough is all sorts of shame, and because you don't feel worthy or enough to do any of these things, so then shame follows it, and it's like this vicious cycle that just it's
Yeah.
so it's so insidious and so frustrating. You just want
So,
like
well, see, so that's why, like, what you're talking about is coming to consciousness. And so many
right.
people are living, unconsciously, as you know, when dealing with clients, they come in and they don't know that they have a high conflict parent. But then you hear all of these high conflict or emotionally immature behaviors, and they're like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, all parent, they get the family brainwashing. All parents are like this. All children and all families argue and fight. Oh, yes, they do. But how do they argue and fight?
Right.
I mean, how do they manage that? So, it is really important for people, to come to consciousness about whatever they need to heal, whether it's toxic family relations, whatever it is. I mean, it's just so important.
It is, and the hard part is that, like you said, they're like, well, all families are like this. This is what they've been fed. And unfortunately, like in my case, I wasn't allowed to go to friends' houses. I wasn't
Oh,
allowed to see other things because, I mean, just
that's
the way the
why.
situation was. Well, not only was that, well, my mother was a child psychiatrist, so she was very good at hiding from us
Ah,
what what was real and everything. But more importantly, in my family, was my father was afraid to be left alone with my mother. So I couldn't spend the night at people's houses because I could not leave him there. He was afraid something would happen to him while he fell asleep. I know that sounds so sad, but like think
wow.
about,
But the
living like
pressure
that
that was on you, I mean, that burden and that pressure to be parentified into a role like you are a protector for your father because you know that it might be possible. I mean, that's like a lot.
Oh, yeah, it was crazy. So I didn't get to see normal households. I didn't get to see what was, I didn't get to see fights resolved because fights in my family ended up someone passing out, someone falling
Right,
asleep, someone
right.
hitting their head, and all of a sudden it was a medical issue. But
Yeah.
like I didn't, so I don't think I had ever in my lifetime seen a conflict emotionally, intelligently resolved.
Yes, because like in my book, I talk about what repair skills does a person need to have in order to do that.
Hmm.
I mean, they have to be self-aware, they have to have empathy, they have to say, between the two of them, we're really overburdening Tammy here. I mean, we're overburdening her with like this problem and this issues and the things that are going on, but they don't have the capacity, whether it's alcohol or their own mental health issues, to actually see beyond themselves. And
Right.
that's high conflict parenting. I mean, it's not being able to see that actually we're the parents here. We need to be parenting our child empathically, attuning to them, showing reciprocity, but that goes missed because of their own limitations.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And no judgment, no fault. I mean, it's probably came from their parents, from their parents, from their parents. And that's why it is so insidious. It is so generational because it's like
Very.
it's so generate. I mean, And it's like I tell my kids, I said, even if I had never picked up a bottle,
Yeah.
never, you still have all of the characteristics of a para-alcoholic
Right.
because you were raised by someone who didn't figure it out yet. I didn't figure out all the stuff until they were little. And then that's when my healing journey grew. But
Ah,
they got a lot of I mean, and I don't feel guilty about it. I did, believe me, when I
yeah.
started going through this stuff and going, oh my gosh, what have I done to my kids? I say this
Right.
and I say that, and I didn't know. So for the people out there listening, it is very important that you understand that what you didn't know.
Right.
And it was at no fault of your own. But once you understand why you do these things and how you do them and you start working through that, now it is your responsibility.
You
So,
know, I really like that because that's the difference, I think, between someone who is showing that they can repair. So, are they getting help for their problem? Are they genuinely saying, I really screwed up when you guys were little. I'm so sorry. Like, I didn't know, having empathy. You know, if you have someone coming at you, whether it's a parent, family member, whomever, and they're showing true remorse, they're telling you how they've grown. They're like, they didn't know. How can you not hold it in your heart to forgive them? You know, suddenly your heart opens and you're like, okay, I can understand that, versus a parent who would say, like, okay, let's just say you didn't get your own help. You blame it all on your kids. Well, no, you guys were rotten when you were younger. That's why I did it. It was because you were getting trouble in school. You were drinking too much and I had to do this. They'd blame it all on the child, take no responsibility, which is where the burgeoning, I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable, I'm defective, there's something seriously wrong with me, can stay with someone for a lifetime.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I want to go back and talk about something because we've said it a couple times and we kept saying staying with, staying with, staying with. Talk about, let's go back to, because this is what am just so passionate about right now. Talk about the nervous system effect of that constant hypervigilance and that constant conflict with no resolution
Yeah.
pattern.
You know, so like anything, there are benefits, you know, to growing up in that kind of environment. But obviously, there are a lot of problems in like relational trauma. So, for example, growing up in an emotionally invalidating environment or a very emotionally chaotic environment makes you hyper tuned to be able to scan, to read a room, to read body language. Many
Hmm.
times people go into healing professions. They make great nurses. I don't think I've ever met a nurse or an ER physician who hasn't grown up in that level of chaos, because guess what? They can function very highly in that. It actually doesn't really bother them like it would bother most. But
Right.
at the same time, that level of what it's doing to the autonomic nervous system, you're constantly in a state of hypervigilance and you don't even know that you're in a constant state of feeling wired, or that's what we call hypervigilance. Like, you know, do you startle easy? Yeah, anytime somebody opens a door, you know, I'm startled. So you don't, so many clients aren't even aware that they're living, you know, in this state of heightened awareness, increased cortisol, which is having effects on the body, different parts of the body, which are detrimental. So they don't really even know it. And a person can go an entire lifetime and say that. So you could be sitting in front of a client, they're visibly anxious, and you're like, you seem very anxious. And they're like, I'm not anxious. They don't even know what they're feeling and what is happening because this is their baseline. I just
Right.
had a client this week say, you know, I don't think I know what it's like ever to actually be at peace and to relax. And she grew up highly, you know, highly dysfunctional, you know, environment. Mom is most likely, you know, narcissist slash maybe even something a little, you know, darker, or more problematic. And, you know, but I said, you know, that's the key piece, is you're actually aware of that right now. You're not
Right.
just going on autopilot. Like you're noticing that you're in a constant state of fight and flight, but there's nothing in the environment right now that's causing you to be fearful, but yet you are
Right.
assessing for danger. Yeah.
Well, it's even like I'm doing a little 30-day nervous system hack thing right now on Instagram. And like today I was just like, just scan the room for 5 things that are neutral. Just
Yeah.
scan the room because
Yeah.
when our brains are trained, like you said, when we grow up like that, to scan for danger. So
Yes.
how often do we sit down and be like, oh, that's a pretty picture on my wall? Like we don't,
Yes.
we only
No.
look for the things that could possibly be a threat. And
Yes.
you're right. And I tell my clients all the time, what do you think your baseline is and of anxiety level? And they're like 7. Well, let's get it down. Like let's only focus on getting that down to a 2 or a 3 even right now.
Yeah.
Because then when I mean, it's the slight, when you start here and then you get triggered, it's like, bam, you're at an 11 out of 10 instantly. But
Yes.
if your baseline can be a 2 or 3, then those things, they might get you to a 5 or 6. And it's like that we can handle, we can deal with that.
Yeah. So it really is about like being mindful. So you're talking about mindfulness, taking up even a new hobby like bird watching, going walking, and like really observing what's going on in the environment. Because guess what? If you grew up in that type of environment, you are also addicted to drama.
Hmm.
So you might be attracting friends, partners who might also have these qualities that
Right.
are very emotionally self-centered without the ability to attune and to have reciprocity towards you. And many times clients will say, well, I'm dating, and I'm like, well, this one sounds like green flag. And they'll say, but he's so boring.
Hmm.
So boring. It's like because he or she has a secure attachment style. It's not avoidant. It's not disorganized. I'm like, this is what you're feeling, your autonomic nervous system, but you're so used to this. So let's, like you said, get you down so you can retrain your autonomic nervous system to be comfortable at a baseline of 2.
Right. But
Retrain it.
right. But you are right. I can remember, I mean, I was at that. I was at that when I was about 29, 30 years old. And it was like, when I met my second husband. And it was that. He was exactly what my first husband wasn't, but it was very uncomfortable sitting
Comfortable.
there in nothing, like not waiting for something bad to happen.
Yes,
I had,
yes. Or waiting
and
for some kind of chaos.
yep, and everybody kept saying, "You'll get used to it." No, I don't, like, no. Like it was so hard, so
Yeah,
hard.
because
And
you're hardwired. I mean, literally, I mean, you could just think of a child being hardwired to have to scan and like constant emotional chaos. So once you've had one blowout or two blowouts, you are constantly looking for scary blowouts, right?
right,
So it could be once a week, it could be once a month, it could be you don't know. You could have a parent who's an alcoholic that just, comes home and there really is no drama. They just pass out. You don't really know, but one or two or three of these will caution anyone, parts of yourself, to stay on alert
right.
continuously. And especially if it was chronic and there was no, Tammy, last night we had a horrible fight. I know you're really like upset about what happened. I passed out drunk. I'm going to get, help for my problem. And mom's like, I know that, this is really having an effect on you. We're going to get counseling for you. That usually doesn't happen with high conflict parents. So
No,
right there would be the validation. So it's more like, no, Tammy or whomever, you're crazy. We're providing for you. So many
right,
people would love to have a mom who's a child psychiatrist and live in the home that we do. And you're so lucky and grateful, while the client or the patient is like, that's gaslighting. They don't know the term, but they're like, this is how I'm feeling inside. And none of this is being validated. So what do I do with this? Yeah.
right. No, absolutely. It, and it's, the patterns just, they go on and on. And that's what and again, for the people out there listening, there is hope for all of this. And it doesn't,
Absolutely.
I say it might have taken me 30 years to figure it out. It doesn't have to take 30 years. We have
Yeah.
so many resources now, so many therapists and coaches, and, there's ways to do this. And where do you think, you're a psychotherapist, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. So where do you think the first place to start is? When you realize, oh my God, my life has really, I need to make a change.
So here's the thing is that people often will say, oh, what's bringing me to counseling is my anxiety is so bad, or I'm suddenly having panic attacks. And they're not even aware that they grew up with any dysfunction, because we've got the cognitive dissonance going on too towards the parent and the family members, which is a love but problematic thing. It makes things very, very confusing. So when I say someone who's coming out of the dark. They've got to like know something like, oh, I heard this podcast on dysfunctional families. That really resonates with me. What do I do first? I mean, the first would be, if you can, get a therapist or coach, but a therapist, particularly one who is trained in this. Because
Right.
there are, unfortunately, and it's not because they're bad therapists or anything like that, they have a different specialty, but they might say to you, all families have problems. Well, this is what you do with an alcoholic parent. Well, it's a little bit deeper than that, because what you've actually, you've gone through is relational trauma. So this is not just one traumatic event. This is traumatic things that have happened in a relationship over decades and continue to go on over decades. So seeking out a therapist, buying books, adult children of high conflict parents, looking up YouTube, videos and things like that. But I also think it's important to have a trained professional, because
Yes.
I mean, God bless everyone with TikTok and all of this stuff. I mean, this is great because this is how we understand the problem a little bit better. But there are a lot of untrained professionals that might inadvertently trigger you with your trauma, and you might not be able to know how to handle it. You might not have the coping skills yet, and that can be a little bit dangerous.
I,
So that's what I
uh,
would suggest.
Kudos
Yes?
to that, because I 100% agree. I say that people, were looking and they're like, "Oh, well, I did a video on how to like self-hypnotize myself, and I figured I'd go back and, whoa, who are you sitting with when you do this?
I
Like,
know.
are you kidding me? Like,
I know.
and even so much information. Like, I was talking to a lady the other day, and we were talking about breathing, and she goes, they keep telling me deep breathe, and I'm like, what? And I asked her, I said, what does it feel like to you when you're having your panic attack? She said, I feel like an elephant is stepping on my chest. I said, can you breathe? And she said, no. Then why would you take a deeper breath? Why would you hold your breath? Like, I mean, and it was so simple, but this was a few months ago. But literally, I was like, how about take two quick breaths and then just breathe out as long as you can? Like, and then she's like,
Yes,
wow, that really helped me. But
it does.
you grab these bits and pieces and you try to piece them all together. And that's why I say all of it's great, but
Yes,
you need a guidance. You need guidance. You need
yes.
somebody to run these things off. And like you said, you need someone that can bring you from a 10 to a 2 if something you do triggers you. Um, I agree. Yes, because there are so many resources out there, but
But yeah,
err with a foot of baby steps. Baby steps. Don't go, I don't know. I just feel like
yes. Well, I
it
mean,
could be
that's trauma-informed care, right? I mean, so people come in all the time and they'll say, I want EMDR. I'm like, that's great, but you actually have to be assessed for that process. So
right.
I have to know that you have the appropriate coping skills, that you can decrease your emotional arousal when you go into trauma. And that could take many times to set up. Even reading this book, Adult Children of High Conflict Parents, I've had people say, and it's true, they're like, the stories, like that really triggered me. Well, your childhood was difficult, so healing from it is going to be challenging too.
Yes.
That's it. But you can completely and totally get through it. I mean, if there's a will, there's a way. You're going to be able to get through it. But definitely having some things in your arsenal to decrease emotional arousal is like really important. And then also something that I always like to, because it's just true, clients come in, they're like, oh, I'm so defective. I came from this environment and now I'm doomed forever. Let's talk about what you're doing well in your life. You are
Right.
not in the mental hospital. You've never been actively suicidal. You have a job and you go to it every day. Do your children ever go hungry or not cleaned? No. So you're doing great and you're very resilient here.
Right.
So I already know that you've got some skills, but when you go through some of these heavy things that you might have pushed out of your awareness, and that's kind of a smart thing that your body does, push it out of your awareness, because why do we want to remember and go back to things that are horrific and painful? But
Right.
just to know that you can be healed from it. Yeah,
Right. Yeah, absolutely. There's so many, and we could literally go. There's so many
I
different
know.
topics. As we're talking, I'm like, oh my God, there's so many different directions I could go with this and everything else.
Yeah,
I do love talking about the nervous system because I do think it is all stored there. And,
it is.
so and just teaching those little hacks, like I say, a good example was I hosted an event in December, and the gentleman was an amazing surgeon. He was for breast cancer, and he did the surgery, and he wanted to show a video about looking at it from like the surgeon's perspective, right? But I'm like,
Ah,
but it was very deep. And I'm like, wait a minute, where are the people ringing the bell? Like, where is the joy in this video? And at the end, I could see everybody was like so tense. Their shoulders were up, their jaws were clenched and everything. And again, it's some people, it's their natural, like, take a deep breath. And I'm like, no, let's shake. Like, literally, like,
well,
everybody get
shaking,
up and shake.
yeah,
Like,
shaking it off. You see athletes do that
yeah,
all the time, like shaking it out of your nervous system. That's interesting because what we do here in Western medicine, and like Dr. Peter Levine talks about it. I think he was like in a car accident. I can't remember when it was, maybe 20 years ago or something. And he was aware that if we stop our traumatic responses, which is what the body does, what animals do after a fight with each other, they shake and convulse. That's releasing your trauma. But in Western medicine, they stop you from doing that. And that's how people can get PTSD. See?
right.
So shaking it off, and you see this all the time. Yoga is another great thing. But if I've trained like in meditation and in yoga, you see people in meditation and they are shaking. You see people in shavasana in the end, and you always know because you say, this person's early on in their journey and their body's actually discharging. You ask them, did you know you were shaking at your nervous system? You were shaking? They're like, no, I didn't know that at all, because the body's discharging the trauma it's discharging it from the body, which is just, it's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. And so necessary. That's what I said. Just
So
whatever feels
necessary.
good, just breathe into wherever you feel that tenseness or that whatever when you have a feeling and it arises, and then breathe into that and then just let it go. Don't try to fight it. That's what we always
Yeah.
do. And that's part of the problem with the highly conflictive parents is everything's okay, sweetie. Suck it up, buttercup. Like, stop
Yes.
crying. Get over it. Like, how many times? I
Yes.
mean, I must have heard that every day of my life,
Yeah.
even when I was happy. Like, what are you so happy about? You got nothing to be so happy about. Okay.
See, emotional invalidation right
Yeah,
there.
and it was,
Uh-huh.
so it's like, okay, I get in trouble if I'm sad. I get in trouble if I'm happy. So I will literally how about we just don't have any emotion? Like,
Right.
and that's a pattern too. It's people. I remember my first client, and I kind of laugh. And going back to you talking about finding someone who is kind of understands. I'm not a therapist, but
Mm.
I remember my first client came to me and she said, Tammy, I've been working with a therapist for like 11 years. And she said, and I went to therapy for a long time. I still do. So I have
Right.
nothing, I'm not saying anything bad about it. But I
Right.
said, did your therapist by chance have two alcoholic parents? And she's like, no. I said, I was you. I was you. I know what to ask you. I know,
Yeah.
I know what you went through. And that's why a lot of healers, they get into healing people that went through what they went through because they know they can help. I mean, she said, my God, in 18 minutes, you told me two things that I could do that changed my whole life. And I'm like, because I
Hmm.
was you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and there's no right or wrong therapist. It's just who
No.
you resonate with, who you trust, because that is a
Yes.
huge issue when you come from high conflict families.
Yeah. So you know what? Like even in that instance, and I say this to everyone, there's never any real wasted time that you have with a therapist. So, okay, you came and see me, but you've been seeing someone for 10 years and you're like, it just kind of fizzled out. Well, developmentally, you probably were not ready. And just the
Right.
fact that you went to that therapist for 10 years, you were able to trust and feel emotionally safe with someone probably for the first time in your life. And
Amen.
that is so important because you didn't feel emotionally safe probably ever growing up with this level of dysfunction. You just didn't. You were always, well, then I'm just going to zip it. I just won't show my emotions. So if I'm happy, I won't show 'em. I won't ask why. I'm just going to have this baseline of like being kind of absent.
Did you
Yeah.
did you ever have that experience with any of your clients where you ask them like, well, who are you or what do you like to do? And they're like, they get
Oh
this like,
yeah.
dear, that was me. I picture back the first time I ever went to a therapist, and she's like, well, who are you? And I was like, that's a pretty deep question. I have no idea. Like, I'm like, I don't know. What do you want me to be?
Yeah.
That's
See, there
literally
you
the
go.
answer I gave. What do you
Yeah.
need me to be? I'll be
What do
whatever
you
you
want
need
me
me
to
to
be?
be.
Uh-huh. And that is a typical response because, I mean, that can go into fawning, right? So I'm
Oh,
sorry, I'll
huge.
be anything that you want me to be. That's a trauma response that is learned. It could be fight, it could be fun, it could be flee. So how are you reacting? So many clients come in and they don't even know how they actually feel. So that's why I like what you're saying. You're actually talking about somatic healing when you're saying, okay, breathe into it. Like, where do you feel it in your body? Oh my God, I feel like the tension like here. Okay, breathe into it and notice where you feel it in your body. Noticing where you feel it in your body can start for you to be able to identify actually emotionally how you're feeling. So many people do not know that. They don't even know
And
how they're feeling.
right. And you asked a question before, like just even naming what happened. Like
Yeah.
naming an emotion is very difficult for some people in the beginning. You don't
Yes.
know. It's like, oh, what is that feeling? Is it anger? Is it sad? Like literally at 26 years old, I mean, I joke and I laugh about it now because it was 22. Oh no, what am I, 58? So 30 some years ago, I couldn't even name an emotion. People
I
were like that.
know.
And I remember my therapist saying to me, well, didn't that make you angry? No. Didn't it make you like sad?
Yeah.
No,
Mhm.
no.
Yep. Right.
Because
Because
again,
blocked off.
I learned to detach,
Yep.
step aside, kind of watch things happen and be like, huh, interesting.
Exactly. So not really being in touch, and I see this a lot like with clients, not really in touch with their anger.
Mhm.
So they can say, over sadness and all of that, but they're not really in touch with, you have to move through all of these feelings and know that they're natural in order to actually heal and not be ashamed of the anger and rage you might have for growing up in an environment like that. A lot of clients along in their healing would say, what would I be like if my parents were more normal? What would I be like? That's a whole grieving thing that they have to go through also to be able to come on the other side and not stay in forever, branded. I'm an adult child of an alcoholic high conflict parent, because every single person goes through something in their life, and
Right.
to learn it from a spiritual lens and like try to move towards post-traumatic growth is like the most important thing.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And the post-traumatic growth is huge, but it's possible. And
Yes.
you have to want it. You have to believe that the work it takes to do it is more
It,
important than the pain that you're gonna, that it's
yeah.
gonna you muster up and things and you have to be able to do the work. I've had people that take my 8-week course and they say, "Oh yeah, I went through it." No, it's been 7 days. There's thousands of articles, week-long exercises.
Yeah.
It's like you have you have to be willing to do the work, but it's so worth it, every step of it.
Yeah.
I
And
mean,
also just know that it is going to feel scary. It is going to feel daunting. And if you do need to take a break for whatever reason, and your autonomic nervous system, but also your memories, you're not going to remember things that you can't handle. I mean,
right.
they just will not come up. So you're never really in a state. I mean, you've already lived through all of that and you did it when you were really young. Now you're an adult. I mean, you can handle it. And don't be so hard on yourself and say, oh my God, I failed, or I didn't do this right, or I didn't do whatever. If it takes you years, it takes you years. Someone just said, it took me 2 months to read your book. I'm like, I'm surprised it took you 2 months. Should have taken you like a year, maybe even a decade. Because this is like emotionally intense stuff. And
Right.
it's okay to look at it and be triggered and be like, okay, this is a little overwhelming. Maybe I'm just going to put this down and maybe I'll look at it in a couple of months. I mean, everyone is developmental. We're
Right.
all on this like timeline developmentally, and you are exactly where you're supposed to be.
Exactly. That's such a good comment, right? You're exactly where you're supposed to be. Like,
Yeah.
don't, and no comparison, there is no linear healing chart.
Right.
like these are my things that happen, so I'm going to plug
Yeah.
them into the chart and your timeline is that doesn't exist. I mean,
No.
I talk to people and you can't beat yourself up about it because then it goes back to that I'm not good enough. I can't do this. And that's it all goes back to that. So love yourself right where you're at. I mean,
Yeah. Self
you know,
love.
treat yourself like your own freaking best friend when you have
Hmm.
that little critic sitting on your shoulder telling you you're not good enough or you're stupid or you're a failure. Like I always say, that little person sitting on your shoulder talking to you, pretend it's like your daughter, your son, whatever, whoever you love the most, and set
Yep.
those standards for that person when you talk to
Yes.
yourself. I
And
mean,
like that,
literally.
that is literally self-compassion work. I mean, that's, the premise of self-compassion. So when you start beating yourself up, notice it. But how would you intervene with your best friend or your daughter if she was saying those things? I mean, what would you
Right.
say? How would you rally behind? How would you motivate? How would you say, none of this is true? What's wrong with you?
Right.
Snap out of it.
Snap out of it. Yep.
Snap out of it. I mean, you're this, you're saying all this, and everybody needs that reminder, when that starts to happen. But it's the awareness that, uh-oh, here that part comes again. That part's coming in highly critical. You can't do this. You're not enough. Like, okay, I'm going to ask you, love you. Thank you for protecting me, but I'm going to ask you to step aside, and I'm going to like focus on something else and retrain myself in another way. That's the whole purpose, to retrain, your neurons. I mean, there's so much research on the brain of like what this does.
Gosh, and
And
think of, and think about it. It wasn't many long ago. I mean, there were some pioneers decades ago, but that stuff
yeah,
was kind of poo-pooed, shooed aside. And,
totally.
oh, we can't change. Once you're hit this certain age, your brain doesn't grow, your blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
All of that is BS for everybody out there. Your brain is like a big ball of Play-Doh, and you
Yes.
get to mold what it thinks and what it believes and what it remembers and what it believes
Yes, and
and what it
actually
hopes for.
retrain it.
Hmm.
Yeah, retrain it and have new neural networks that actually are created, new pathways. I mean, why do you think when you start a habit so hard in the beginning, but after you do it 20, 30 times, you just start to automatically do it. You've just rewired your brain. So there is no static, like, no, you can rewire your brain, you can rewire your autonomic nervous system, and you can heal from anything. But like you said, Tammy, what it takes is just like to be successful in anything in life. It takes, I'm going to do this, even though it sucks. And, oh, I don't feel like going to therapy today. Like, oh my God, like, oh, it's like, come into therapy and let's talk about what's going on with you, because you're usually right there. You're like one step away from a major awareness that's going to happen. So that's
Hmm.
normal to feel that level of, I mean, who really wants to go back to the traumatic things in their life and rehash them? Who would want to do that? I mean, that's not
Right?
fun.
Right.
That's not fun, but it's so worth it to come out of the patterns and to be fully alive and to have full self-love and self-respect for yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Love it. Well, Dr.
love it.
Hutchinson, this is so much fun. I could talk to you forever, but I
I
will not.
know.
I know, right? I feel like there's so many different topics and so many different directions I wanted to go. And I'm like, but
I
maybe I'll
know.
have you back on. Who knows?
Definitely. I would love to
But
come back on. I've enjoyed myself.
yeah, so tell people if they want to work with you, how you work and how they can reach you, the best place to reach you.
The best place to reach me would just be my website, so www.drtracyhutchinson.com, and just the contact me page will guide you into an email. Obviously, I have the book that there's links to that where you can purchase that on Amazon or Barnes and Noble or wherever there are major book retailers.
Okay,
So, yeah.
perfect. And all that will go in the show notes. But first, I want to thank you for coming on. I
Thank you.
love it. And lastly, I want you to leave the listeners with some words of wisdom or something tangible they can either do or something positive to carry throughout the day with them
Today,
today.
well, the fact that you are on and listening to the show, whether you are a regular listener of the podcast or this is your first or second show, you are already on your step in your journey to healing. And once you reach a certain state of awareness, often there's no going back. You're going down the rabbit hole
Mm.
of healing. So know that even listening to a podcast, journaling every morning, you are already nourishing yourself with self-respect and self-love. You're on the journey, and more than likely, you are going to heal. You will. You're gonna heal from it because you're already, being attracted to the things that are more positive in your life versus staying stuck into something. So you're already coming to consciousness. So congratulate yourself for that.
Perfect. Thank you so much again for coming on.
Sure. Thank you.
You're very welcome. And for everybody else out there, you heard it. That was Dr. Hutchinson. And make that first step. You're here, you're listening to it, you've got that awareness. Make the second step. It's one step at a time, every day at a time, loving yourself and knowing that at the end of the day, no matter what people in your life have told you or shown you, You're worth it and you deserve it. So
Yes.
I love you guys and I'll see you back next week.